Welcome, everybody, to Dear Asian Americans, wherever you are. Whenever you may be listening to this, we sincerely hope that you are staying healthy and safe and sane, and preferably inside. At least where we're recording right now, when we're recording, we're about to have a really, really warm weekend in California. So um, fight those urges, fight those temptations, stay home. And the more we do that, the sooner we can all hang out together and celebrate all the fun stuff that we're doing. Um, Today, I get to have a really, really awesome guest on my show. Um, he's got one of the most interesting backgrounds I've heard of. And once we get to know him, you'll definitely agree. He's also got a very, very cool nickname, which then he's created his own brand and his own podcast around. But if you are somebody who is interested in going into professional services at a big four firm globally, if you are somebody who is interested in venturing into the world of e games and video games, or if you're just somebody who just wants to learn tips and tricks about being a successful, more importantly, a human centered business person, we're going to have a lot of fun today. So, really, really honored and excited to welcome David Chen to the show. Hi, David.
Hey, buddy, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So, when we look at your resume, it's like, wow, you got Deloitte on there. You are, partner of a world recognizable e-games company, esports company called FaZeClan, and you're involved in a number of different and fun and almost very inspiring brands out there. Um, so I want to know where David came from, because obviously things like this don't happen overnight. Now, you those people who know you also know you as sort of the perpetual mentor, the older brother figure, who has been so kind to me and so kind to many other people, in now
Thank you.
paying it forward in a way, let's say, but not really paying it forward because it's just part of the ecosystem, right? There's no backwards and forwards. It's just fluid, uh, being a human being. Um, Share with us how the Chen family ended up in America, and where did you guys live in your first few years?
So we came from Taiwan. I was born in Taipei, so I am probably a legitimate fob, as you would say. Definitely fresh off the boat. It's a cool boat, so I'll take that. Came to the States when I was about two or three, and really in the household we spoke Mandarin, and then when my parents were really talking trash, they speak Taiwanese, right? Me and Ian. So for me, it was like you don't understand. I was like, I understand everything that's not necessary and is really not good to talk, but I knew all the bad words and the dumb words because that's Asian parents, man. And it was real humble beginnings. We're really economically poor. I think like most of us, our parents struggled to speak the language. They tried their best. They weren't educated. My parents, unfortunately, did not go to college. They went to high school. They're looking for a better life and came to this great country, like so many of us. And I remember my kind of like my earliest memories were very fond memories, but there were things like our kitchen table was a cardboard box with a yellow draping over it, right? A tablecloth per se, and going through the garbage can in the most ghetto communities and taking the beds out. And I didn't even know what a box spring or what a mattress was, a frame was, because to me it was so foreign. Like I didn't know until I was like 15 what the heck that was. And really just kind of grew up in that upbringing. And it was real interesting because my parents, like most immigrants, gravitated towards the restaurant business, and they were in the restaurant business. And I remember, I remember this one thing where they didn't have enough money to afford a babysitter, and my mother was a coat checking person. And inside, it was basically like a closed door, and then behind all the coats. And my mom hid me and told me to be very quiet at work. And I just sat there till the late hours. And I sat in this little corner with my two toys and just played. And it was very, very quiet. And not really understanding kind of the upbringing where we're at, and knowing how we're economically a little bit more lesser than some people, and really just kind of understanding that, right? And that's kind of where we came from and started. And it was a real interesting struggle because, like most Asian American kids, your parents can't help you with homework after third grade. You have to start teaching your sibling. You take on the bigger adult role, but as well you do a sibling role, and those lines get very blurred because you're teaching them all the stuff that what prom is and what homecoming is and what driving is and
Right.
how to deal with sex and drugs and things that your parents will never talk to you about, right? The no-nos, but they were the reality of our society. And that's kind of how I came here. And it was a very interesting journey, but it was a very humbling one as well.
Coming from that, coming from that background, which is humbling, right? And I think a common theme amongst many of our guests is things that we don't ever get to talk about with our parents. Not because they're bad parents; they obviously, sacrifice so much for us that we can't even imagine doing that today, right? Just the amount of um, ability to do grunt work and really eat the humble pie every single day. But these discussion topics, as you mentioned, whether it's sex or homework or girls or American life, they had to defer to society to teach us that stuff because one, they were too busy trying to survive and put food on the table, literally, and two, they didn't know what it was, right? Like, I remember, they're like, "What the hell's Halloween?" Right? Like,
Yeah.
stuff.
What's right? What's Easter? Why are we doing this? What's Thanksgiving? And I remember, like the one thing about being an Asian American that most Asian Americans have to understand is we're all in the same boat. It's not Japanese and Koreans and Chinese and Taiwanese. And we're all Asian Americans. And now more than ever, we really need each other. And our communities lack that voice. And that's why when someone of another ethnicity or another background, when something happens to them, they riot up. And our people, we brush it off. But we brush it off because as immigrants, we were told to shut up from our parents. Don't cause trouble. Don't cause problems. Be quiet. If you get bullied, it's very, very bad. Go tell your teacher. And they didn't understand that when you were telling your teacher, the kids would make fun of you and pummel you more. And they didn't understand that as hard as they were working, you're on TV and you're watching Family Matters and Full House, and those dads basically are raising you. They're raising you. And Arnold is a father figure, and Sylvester Stallone's a father figure. They're teaching you what it's like to be a man, and this society, and Rocky, and the American cause and the American dream. And yet you're so conflicted because we know that our parents love us. We know our parents are working so hard and they're doing the best they can, but they can never assimilate or relate to a lot of things that we're growing up to. And I remember one of the things I told my parents was my mom was probably I was probably about 36 at the time. We were watching Karate Kid, the new one. And there was a scene where the kids are beating up on Jaden Smith, you know, purely because he's probably black and he was new and it was what it was. My mom looks at me and she goes, "Oh, I'm so glad that never happened to you." And I look at my mom and I said, "Mom, when I was about 10 to about 14, I got the shit kicked out of me daily. And kids would beat me up and they would tease me for my haircut and my wear Asian clothes and why I smelled a certain way and why I would take your shoes off and why my eyes were so small." Oops. Oops. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Sorry about that. I don't know what
no,
happened.
good.
And and why our shoes are so small and why our shoes are so and why do you take off our shoes at home and all that weird stuff. And really the crux of it was they just didn't understand. And we didn't understand and trying to explain that to them. I remember I didn't even know what a Chef Boyardee was. So I was like 14 and I was like, this is amazing. And the holidays was a big thing. And I think a lot of people don't talk about it because our parents don't know how to deal with it because they take it as we're shaming them, whereas we're not trying to understand them and say, look, I know you the best you did. Here's what I struggled was. I think the other thing is we weren't able enough to be more compassionate and forgiving because I guarantee if any of us as Asian Americans were thrown in another environment, another country, we probably couldn't do half of what our parents did. We don't have the grit for it. And so that allows it. But the more important thing is forgiving and loving understanding. It took me a very long time, and I'm very open about that in my podcast about my relationship with my father, a lack of relationship, and all the things that a typical Asian dad probably shouldn't be doing, and how my mom had to stick with it, and how divorce was not a answer. It was a no-no, and we're sticking with this. We're going to make it work, and really trying to understand him. Where there's a point where we wouldn't talk to each other anymore, we disown each other, and then one day I just woke up and realized that we just didn't love him the way he needed to be loved. And from there, me and my dad have a great relationship now where, it's very scary to talk to that father figure, but it's more scary if they pass away and you never can. And I say this all the time. And I know we have talked about this in our previous conversation, which is, listen, if you can give someone who is economically not viable $1 and that person ends up doing it to drugs, that's between them and a higher being. Between you and that higher being, you did the right thing. And I encourage people to do that with their parents, because you at least get it off your chest. There's no kid that doesn't want their parent to love them. There's no kid that doesn't want their parent to understand. I was just watching Tiger Tail 2 days ago, Christina Co, big fan of hers, and the ending, just, I don't want to ruin for everyone. The ending was very something I can understand and relate to, and I really know that they're trying their very very best to do it, but now it's our turn to try our best to make them assimilate and
Right.
understand. And sometimes it works out when you have grandchildren, but if you don't have grandchildren like myself, you really have to kind of give them the okay and the understanding, because you're going to be at peace. And that to me is the most important thing. And you won't feel the guilt, because we're always taught to shame,
Right.
right? It's all shame. It's not honor. You look bad. You shouldn't do it that way. But the shame in our hearts, and that lack of love that we have felt, or the emptiness, will get filled if you're able to take the bigger step and do that, because they really don't know better and you do. And therefore, it's your turn to do it. And I know for me personally, it's made a world difference in my life.
You bring up a good point, David. I think whether it's career expectations or life expectations or whatever, a lot of us grow up uh, explicitly or internally resenting our parents for being forced or pressured to live a certain way and saying, why can't you be more open minded to do the things that I want to do? Yet we are all guilty of this. And we realize it much, much later in life is I expected them to love me in the way that I wanted to, and I wasn't open minded. We were not open minded as an entire generation to receive the love that they were trying to provide, because they were literally doing the best that they could. And you're right. If at your age and my age, they're like, all right, we're packing up our shit and moving to Brazil,
That's it.
we can't do it. And then to
Yeah.
tell me that in one generation that you can sit there and I can sit here and have this discussion, no, it
Right.
doesn't work that way.
Right.
And so those odds are, every Asian American second generation success story is effectively zero if you look at it statistically, but we all went through that. um so speaking of statistically improbable things that immigrants have done, um your path into your first post college career was an
Right.
unconventional one. Share with
Right.
us, how did you end up at University of Arizona in Tucson and end up at Deloitte?
So, unlike a typical Asian, and I'm sure there's a lot of Asians who are like me out there, I'm terrible in math. I played sports. I was never a bad child. I didn't do anything that would ever worry my parents per se. But I wasn't a really focused child. And that time it was, oh, focus more on your schoolwork, and now it's time for tutoring. And I looked at my parents and I was like, it's not here. And that resonates from, I think I mentioned this to you. My mom tells me a story in fourth or fifth grade where I got honor roll, and I gave her the paperwork and I said I made honor roll, and she had no idea what the heck that meant. And she tells a story which I think I blocked out of my mind, where I got the paper later and I threw it in the garbage can, and she picked it up and she opened it to the school, asked what it was, and they said that I did good grades. But from that day, I never did honor roll. And I still to this day cannot, I vaguely remember it now. Maybe I put it in my head, but I don't remember it. And so the path for me in school was, I was a kid in SATs that had like the 1020, and that was amazing. And all the other Asian kids were hitting 1600s and 1500s. And you would hear, oh, Andy did 1600 and he's a stockbroker at 14 and a half, and he's on the varsity tennis team. And oh, his Chinese is so good. Oh, and Andrea, she honor roll and this and this. And then there's just me, the guy that's out there. And I think there's a lot of Asian Americans that wanted the expectations, but lost confidence and faith, not necessarily through their family, but through their friends and their environment. And when we weren't hitting the assimilation of the A plus and the 100 and the doctors and the lawyers and the engineers, we were failures. We're ugly failures. Or if I'm playing sports and I'm on varsity and I'm starting, I'm the captain of my sports team, my parents were okay with it. But then my aunts were like, oh, that's never going to do anything for you. You need to go back and focus on school. Look at my daughter. She has 8 PhDs. And I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying there is no course, and we as Asian Americans have a little bit more harder, because we have to adhere to those standards. And there is a sense of embarrassment, and there is an embarrassment from our parents when they talk to their friends and their family about us. And then that's how I got to U of A, because the reality is, out of the 10 schools I applied to, I only got into like 4, and U of A was the closest one. And I was like, F it, I've never been to Tucson, I'm just going to go. And my parents took me there. And boy, was that an eye opener. And I went to U of A, and I was there for 6 years. I was president. And then I didn't really hang out with Asian Americans growing up, because I grew up in El Paso, where it was 8% Hispanic. So that was nice. But I would go to Taiwan every summer, and I would show up at U of A, and I'm the only kid who's taking community college math that's Asian because I'm that bad at math. I mean, it was the expectations weren't working there. I mean, I remember one time I was getting tutored by my friend Roy. Roy is Caucasian. And I looked at Roy and I said, you realize that everybody here thinks I'm tutoring you and you're the one who's tutoring me because I'm so bad at math. And then you have to break those stereotypes with all these young people because there are a lot of good Asians in math. And then there's a couple of 3 or 4 of you that are just like the bad math Asians, right? And like, oh, what's up? Like, you're my friend. And that was like the running joke. And we grew up in a time where it was interesting because we really had to be American. And when I got into U of A, it was a blessing, but I stayed there for 6 years. And it wasn't because I was getting my PhD or my master's like some of you geniuses out there. I wasn't smart enough to get my bachelor's degree because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I changed my major like 8 times. And I was told eventually from the vice dean of the business colleges, stop wasting your time. Stop wasting our time. We're really, really, really good at what we do. Get out of this college. You're never going to make anything in business. And I remember the look on my face and disappointment. And the only thing I worried about is what my parents were going to say. I didn't care about anything else. And the next thing was, what are my friends going to say? And it was never about, well, what's going to make me happy and can I get it done? And this is a 21-year-old, 22-year-old man at that point, or young man who was trying to figure this out. And then the bottom fell out. I was 6 years into college. I didn't get a degree. It was starting to get embarrassing. I couldn't figure out how to lie anymore. I couldn't figure out how to do it. I know 2 other Asians that are like still my friends to this day that kind of suffered and went through the same thing. They both ended up getting degrees. I still haven't gotten that degree. And then I go work at my parents' restaurant because both of them had heart attacks. And we had to do what an Asian family does. Mom and dad are about to die. I'm done with school. You've been there 6 years. Your sister skipped a year. My sister went to school. My parents could home for one person. So I went back to El Paso, worked at a restaurant from 22 to 25, put in 100, 120 hours a week in the restaurant business, did everything in the restaurant business just to keep our home. And we had to start all over again. And I pissed away 6 years of my life because my ego and the falseness of being an Asian in America, nice car, good job, notoriety, but pure and unadulterated unhappy with everything. So then I go home and I work, and surprisingly, I get this job offer, and it was because I speak 5 languages. And the guy from Deloitte said, "Look, we're looking for someone who can speak Chinese. Are you interested in Spanish and English, Mandarin?" I was like, "Sure, I'm in." I didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't even been to China at that point. I was 25. I'd only been to Taiwan. And I took the job. And I didn't even know what Deloitte was. I mean, as silly as that sounds. And I remember getting the job, and the first sense of hatred is I showed my friends, like, I got a job. And my friend looks at me and he goes, "How'd you get the job?" And the other friend goes, "I want to see a business card. You're full of shit." And that's when I realized the Asian American mentality was off because it was a sense of hatred. You're speaking my brother and my boy. And that's when like Better Luck Tomorrow just came out, right? And like it was like, oh, that was like a big deal about this Asian brotherhood. And there was no Asian brotherhood. It was Asian haterness. And I couldn't understand it for the first time in my life because I was like, we're from the same people. Why aren't we congratulating each other? So I go home, I take this job, and I worked there for 6 months as a college dropout, mind everybody here, and as a manager in consulting, focus in on trying to do Chinese business, and then I get fired. And I get fired because I don't want to sit there and say it's my race, but I was the only Chinese guy in the whole firm. I'm in Mexico. And the 6 guys were together. They all went to college. They're all boys. And so minority boy go out. And I didn't perform. And I asked for training and asked for all those things. And then I go home, and now I'm 26. I bought my hot new car because as every Asian American is, as soon as you get your job, you need to get the best car, right? Mercedes, BMW. I buy my new car. Oh, as soon as you get it, you need to invest in a house. I buy a house. And then 3 months later, I'm flat broke with no job. And now I'm ashamed. And I'm sitting at home, and I'm not telling people I don't have a job anymore. And I'm helpless, and I don't know how to get out of the situation. And I can't tell my parents, and I'm eating ramen every night. And I realized the shame of being Asian was greater than the shame of losing the job. Because I was more afraid of what my family was going to say than what the world was going to say. And that to me was wrong. I couldn't understand what it was at the time. And then a green light hit me, and I said, let me go back and let me ask for this job. But this time I'm going to take a 60% pay cut from 60,000 or 70,000, 24,000 a year, and I did a value added proposition. I said, you give me 3 months to make, and I will sell $2,000 a month or $9,000 in sales, and you will turn around and you will pay me 2,000, and I'll hit the number equivalent. And he said yes. And at that point, I Googled everything. I Googled everything about China. I Googled everything that we did, from auditing, taxes, and I learned it on my own. And it wasn't the Harvard education that I wish I had. It wasn't the PhD that I got that every managing partner of Deloitte usually has. It was just a nobody learning, and that was from the spirit of our families, because we're a bunch of nobodies learning to be somebodies. And that journey really perpetuated my life, because in 6, 7 years, I'm a partner. And the day of partnership, I'm walking in and they're like, "Where'd you graduate college? Can we get your U of A certificate?" And I go, "What U of A certificate?" "From college." And I said, "I didn't graduate college." And they were mind blown. Now, mind you guys, I had been on Forbes, CNN. I was a keynote speaker when the presidents came. The minister of economy right now in Mexico to China worked underneath me. I was on every commercial board you could imagine. And now they realize that the Asian, who probably they thought had a PhD, didn't even have a bachelor's. And then the journey was so interesting, because from that point on, it was not the regular path, right? But they still let me be partner. I ended up trying to finish my schooling, but this time it was my master's degree without even having to have a bachelor's. I got several master programs on partial scholarships because of my experience. And that is what I want to share, because it's not the path that any person, much less an Asian American, should be taking. And then there's a whole group of us that are helpless. So what? I'm not going to be anything, so I'm going to go be a bad kid. You were never a bad kid. You were just in an environment that made you feel like shit, so you acted that way.
Right.
And that's not the way you were raised. That's not the struggle. And for me, it was just that reality check. And I went into Deloitte and made the best of the situation. And I held myself accountable, because this is the most important thing I learned during that time was, I'm good enough. By my standards, I'm good enough. I love myself. I have self-love. I have self-understanding. I have self-value. I have self-worth. Those are things that no one teaches us. And in our cultures, it's even less. And the one thing I tell everyone is, no one's ever taught you how to be happy. Nobody. Why have we never learned we learn how to write our languages, we learn our cultures, we learn how to assimilate our cultures, we learn how to talk to our elders and all our old traditions that we're holding to keep on. But not one single person has ever taught us, more so in the Asian American race, to be happy. And that was my journey, and that's been my journey. And I found it, and I have ups and downs and things like that. But I think a lot of us don't realize is we were generally raised in it wasn't positive. It wasn't negative, but it wasn't like everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows and go do what you want to do. It was do this to get here, but it wasn't making you happy. And so for me, I like telling my journey, not because I want to discredit anyone else's journey, but I want to credit mine, because there's so many of us out there who are like that are a little bit lost, that are very, very scared, that are very, very embarrassed to embarrass our family members. But at the end of the day, when you take care of your parents and you can take them on trips and you can finally achieve the successes that you're praying to get done, it's an amazing feeling, and it's a humbling feeling.
Should is my least favorite word in the entire English language, because I always wonder how many masterpiece building musicians, artists, world changers are stuck in courtrooms and in doctors' offices today, or even yet in some sort of weird mental health hole because they never figured it out, unfortunately. David, I want to go back to something that you glossed over very, very quickly. You got the Deloitte job because you spoke 5 languages. You
Right.
self-admittedly you were a bad student. You took 6
Yep.
years, didn't graduate. How did the 5 languages come into place, and when did you learn that?
Well, we obviously Mandarin is we grew up speaking Mandarin because my parents couldn't speak English, and then of course Milanese or Fukinese or Taiwanese, whatever you guys want to call it nowadays, was because they were talking garbage about me, and I picked it up and I could assimilate the words. And English was from school, and Spanish was going every weekend when we started having our own restaurants and working in Mexico and being a dishwasher and a busboy. And then if I had the time off, there was a basketball court right behind where I played the kids and everybody. I started learning Spanish that way.
Hmm.
We were talking to people. and I picked it up about 12, and I guess I'm really good at it, and that's kind of what happened. And I realized that at least those languages are 80% of the world's languages. And to encourage everyone here, out of the 250,000 employees that we had at Deloitte, five spoke those languages, four worked for me. So that should tell people that that superseded any of the other degrees that were out there. And of course, personability, right? Be able to talk to people, be able to sell, be able to be liked. Kind of the, with Asians, it's either one really extreme, like it's really, you're really, really cool, but you're not here, or you're really, really nerdy, but you're not cool. And I like to think I'm a combination of both because we had to break out of our shell to do the sales things, and it really worked out in my favor because I understood the culture, and that's kind of how I learned the languages and went from there.
Part of you having that opportunity though was just, let's call it luck, right? Like, how does a kid from Taiwan, El Paso wasn't your family's first destination, but to land up in that one part in America that would give you the ability through your family and your restaurant business to maintain the Asian culture, languages, and customs, English, obviously, because we're from here, but then to live in a border town that gave you the obvious opportunity to just learn Spanish on the fly and not through formal education. And then that's the thing that ultimately was the gate opener for you to propel the rest of your life, which is things that we don't think about, right? Like if you listed your three things, right? Like, David is this, this, and this, and this. What do you think is the one thing that got him in the door at Deloitte and now the rest is history? Nobody's pointing to multi-language skills, but it's not just a language. You can study language off of a textbook or an app these days. You knew three cultures in and out, and you could be that chameleon. And it doesn't that's the unicorn part, not the language, right? It's your ability to sit in a room and go English, Mandarin, Spanish, and just even interpret and translate the culture and the tones and the business customs. And that, I think, is your most invaluable skill. And it happened that you got in through, in unconventional means, but they didn't kick you out, right? You were there for many, many years. And,
Right.
I don't know, like I used to work for a big, professional services firm. Like out of the managing directors and partners there globally across all the brands, how many partners and MDs don't have college degrees? Probably no. We'll never know because nobody's going to admit to it at this point, right? Like
Right.
that's
Not
how
for
I
their
view it.
age. Yeah.
Um, so 4 years ago, you decided to leave corporate life or the Deloitte world behind. Um, that's also interesting to me because when you climb the ladder of corporate, professional services as it is consulting, partnership is sort of the end goal, right? People go there, they park themselves, they collect checks, um, and that is supposed to be, or should be, I guess. That word again comes up. That's supposed to be the destination, but you decided to leave that behind and to chart your own path. Tell us about that.
Nothing is more scarier to leave something as established as that under any circumstance, whatever the circumstances were, right? It's scary. And mine was more economical and situational than it was necessity, right? Or want. But what happened. And I like to sit there and say that there was some sort of inspiration. This is why I did it. It was from a very negative thing. It was not being, the peso had devaluated half of its value. I was getting paid in pesos. I'm living in the U.S. I was not getting along with the managing partner. And like every young 30 some odd year old person, I know it all. I'm hot shit. I've overcome it all. And I'm not gonna lie to everyone, I was a little bit arrogant, cocky. What most people didn't realize is I also had a bunch of bars, restaurants, and clubs and businesses while working at Deloitte. I had 500 employees. And so during lunch, I'd run in and cook, and then at dinner time, I'd go in and run the businesses. And on the weekend, I'd go run my businesses. And the next morning, I would go back in Deloitte. And I sleep 3 or 4 hours, which is why I'll be 40 in 2 weeks, and just recently engaged because it was my priorities in business and life to do it. And when the bottom fell out on that, it was very negative. It was very, very dark. And I remember the tears I had in my eyes. It was December. It was December 5th. I can actually remember the damn date. I officially left January 5th. But I looked at my mom in tears and I'm so ashamed. And they knew something wrong. And I just burst out in tears as 33, 34-year-old man and said, I'm leaving. It's done. It's over with. Who am I now? What am I going to do? What are people going to say? Who is David Chen after a decade at Deloitte and is on every single newsletter? And now I've proven everybody wrong. Who am I? And it wasn't because I had this aspirational dream to become who I'm trying to become now. It was because it was a failure. We don't talk about that. Dude, I have failed so much more than I've ever succeeded, but I'm proud of it, and I will tell you that. And I'm honest about it because I don't care about face. Face kills. Our whole entire race, in my opinion, loses because it's all about face. It's not about what we should do. It's about how we look, right? And that drives me nuts. And for me, I'm out. I'm done with Deloitte. And I started, I was looking around, I was fishing, and I started my first PE firm, and we did some amazing deals. And for most people here, I don't know if this ever happened. I've had a couple. I probably say I've had $1 billion slip through my hands a couple of times at this point. And we're representing. If you're good at what you're doing, people will stick with you. Deloitte will always have its network. I encourage anybody that is starting off to do a base like a Deloitte, like something like that, because you should learn your base at 5, 6, 7 years. If you make it a partner, you should leave. Because in this world, no one ever questions my credibility because I
Right.
was managed by Deloitte. It just is what it is, right? And as you see in a non-traditional way, when we started doing sports, we were representing Fosun to try to buy 14% of the Memphis Grizzlies, and I met Fosun through Deloitte.
Mm.
I'm trying to broker a deal for an NBA team, and then the bottom falls out, and Steve buys it for $1 billion, the Clippers, and it's over. We start all over again, and then we got into the cannabis space, and I remember freaking out because we bought a license and we sold it, we're running it, and I've never partaken in it, but I just did it. I was like, man, what are my parents going to say? What is my family going to say? You left Deloitte and you guys bought a dispensary in Arizona and you're running it? What are you thinking, David? And I had to have that conversation with my parents. So we bought it 3-2, we sold it for 6-7 in a year. It wasn't a bad thing.
Mm.
And all the tricks I learned were from Deloitte and the restaurants, because running the core practice of running a business at a restaurant was no different than doing anything that's in retail. And that's what we did. And then I got into blockchain. I explained that to my parents. And like, how do you go from Deloitte to cannabis to blockchain, and trying to even understand how to say it in Mandarin? And then mainland China and Taiwan, they say it in different terms. And you got to figure out how to say it because you start getting confused. And then I get into eSports with GTIF Capital. My parents like, you went from Deloitte to cannabis to blockchain to eSports. And I told my parents, I have more connections now through these different spaces. I made Forbes this morning again, and it was just talking about branding. I would have never had that if I was at Deloitte. And so for most people, shame supersedes success. And for us, you should never let shame supersede success, because there is no shame. You should stop self-sabotaging. You are worthy. You can heal. You can grow. You can continue to be everything that you wanted to be, but you have to be happy with yourself. And that's what I did. And I have my days where we had to figure out to pay bills, and I have my days where we're doing super, super great. And I have, PFS is where I'm worth this much money and nice this, nice that. And I still struggle. And as an Asian American, I'm very proud to say that. I still have to figure it out. But I'm on Forbes. My family's happy with me. My family loves me. I'm super, super engaged with them. And that's what I was lacking those 5 years ago that I don't lack now. It was finding true happiness.
It's funny you mentioned that. I think you and I share a very, very similar passion in mentoring young people, students, early career professionals, basically trying to tell them stuff that we wish we had heard. And maybe we heard it, we just didn't hear it in the right tense, or somebody who
Right.
looked like us said it. So it all makes a difference. It makes all the difference in the world. But time and time and again, the thing that students come up to me or message me after the fact and go, the thing that resonated with me the most about what you said was, you're older than me, but you're still trying to figure your shit out. Because when
That's
we
right.
hear from people on stages, they never admit to that. Never, ever, ever. They want to do, like you said, it's the facade thing. And maybe it's a combination of the Asian background and the American machoism. But, weakness is bad. So you want to, flaunt and, just, I don't know, for clout is the new word, right? Like you just want clout. So you go, accentuate everything that you did and never put the failures on your resume or never even talk about it or overdress or overextend yourself coming up with external validations of success. And it's none of it matters. But part of your storytelling, which I find fascinating, is you struck a nice balance between still caring about the opinions of your parents because that matters to you still, in your identity as a son and as a man, but also have found not to have that direct your decision making, right? So a lot of people don't ever pursue cannabis, don't ever pursue things that are not, um, on the menu, let's say, of acceptable things because they're afraid of the shame, as we talk about often. But you do it, but then you figure out a way to bring them into the conversation so that they understand. Um,
Right.
when I was a consultant, my parents probably still now have no idea what I did. Like, what do you mean? Like, cool, you go on a lot of business trips, but like, how do you? There's a lot of things about American business culture that is really hard or impossible to explain. And even if you did, a week later they're like, wait, what do you do again? And so it's this world that we still care, but we don't do it for their acceptance. We share because we care, and
Right.
it's but along the way, um, it's really interesting to me. So when our parents moved here, collectively as a generation, they did not know what they were going to do in 5 years. It was, let's get to the end of the day, let's feed ourselves, let's make some money. But within one generation, there was this massive expectation that we were supposed to have all of our shit figured out when we were 17 and to follow this prescribed path. But when we pivot, they go, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, you guys didn't know what you were doing, so like, why is this
Right.
any different for me?" Um,
Right.
you've had a fascinating path. Right now, you're involved, in a large way, in the esports space. Obviously, it's an industry that didn't exist when you were at Deloitte. It's an industry that wasn't even as big as it is today when you left. Talk about, share with us some lessons that you've had in timing of the things that you've done.
Most of the times, we don't do things because, like you said, of the shame. Not our knowledge, not our passion, not our love. And it's time for us to realize that. And I've told this to my parents, just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I don't respect you. That's a big thing. But you have to open those lines of communications. And oftentimes I still get the, oh, you don't respect me thing. And then I'm like, oh, you want to go on a trip? And yeah, we'll go on a trip. All right, well, that's my respect for you. You know what I mean? Asian parents, I think in a whole, will love us more than anyone else, and they will never have the ability to say it. We need to break the cycle. It needs to stop with us. I want my fiance is white. My woman before that was Chinese. You can imagine the discussion. My mom is very traditional on how that worked out and the cultural differences we have and the things that are being said because she's a beauty queen and she's very smart. She does certain things and she's a model. And my parents are like, oh, bikini, oh, so no good. Oh, bad boy, bad boy. That type of thing. But it was communicating. And it's communicating in a way that's very respectful and learning how to communicate that they can accept. But the only way to do this, and this is core of business life, is understanding their position. And if you don't understand their position, you'll never communicate with their parents. Their position is, I came here as a nobody to become somebody, so you could be way better than me. I'll never tell you that. And you're not living up to what I thought it was. But if you can do this and this and this and go from there. And I remember the conversation with my parents. I said, one thing you never asked me was about if I'm happy. My parents didn't know what to say when I said that to them. They looked at me with shock. And I said, I was completely uneffing happy then. I was unhappy with myself. I was unhappy with the fake person I was. I have 10 cars. I have Lamborghinis. I have a bunch of houses. I have everything you wanted as an Asian American. I paid off my mom's car, my dad's car, paid off almost their house, bought them another house in Asia. And I hate myself.
What was a
Think about
turning
it.
What was a turning point?
The turning point was I realized I was just like my dad. Everything I hate about my parents, everything I everything that I resented growing up with them, I realized I wasn't compassionate enough and loving enough and truly give them that unconditional love the way they taught us to be better. And then when I realized I could do that, I understood their positions. And from those positions, I changed to be a better person. And as much money as I was making, as much money I was doing, what I was giving my parents were less happier with me because I didn't spend time with them, quality of time, sitting down and talking about the old days, listening to the same stupid story over and over again, teaching my dad how to use the remote control, even though it clearly says power, have now ordering them pizza when they ordered us pizza for 25 years. I mean, things like that, and just kind of accepting them and saying, listen, I have a 4-year-old niece that no matter what, how bad my day is, no matter what's going on in my life, no matter anything, the moment she asks me to play, uncle's ready to go play, and I'm cool because this is my baby, and I don't have the patience for my parents. Oh, that's choice. That's ignorance. That's anger. That's not loving yourself and forgiving and being compassionate. And that turning point was when the Deloitte thing happened, and single-handedly, that chain ended up making me crumble my businesses. I started losing one business after another. Almost lost my fiance, and I'm sitting there looking at myself and saying, "How did you get here from here to here? Why were you so concerned about Gucci and LV and height, and not concerned by saving that money and taking your parents on a trip because they don't know how much longer they're going to live, or going to see grandpa and grandma, or taking those moments that were so memorable because our version of success is material." You know, you hear African American communities talk about slavery in the sense where it comes to clothes and items, and Asians are just as guilty of this, if not more. Right? That's what it is. It sucks. And we don't talk about that, but it did. And when I realized that that wasn't making me happy and my family happy, then I realized that I had to make that shift. So then I sat at home and I lived at my sister's house for 7 months, taking care of this 1-year-old at the time, and being very honest with myself and my ego and my personality and what was wrong with me, and realizing how I was like certain things of my parents I didn't want to be like. There's a movie called Man, Woman, Eat, Sleep, I think it was. Back in the 90s, it's a Taiwanese film. And the youngest daughter ends up hanging out with the dad, even though she doesn't get along with the dad at all, because she's just like the dad. And then when I realized that position, that's how I got my relationship back with my dad. So I realized what he was going through. I mean, look, none of us could have survived the Cambodian Pol Pot regime. None of us could survive the refugees of Vietnam. None of us could survive 2 generations of all of us fighting internally amongst Asians. We're definitely not going to survive communism. We weren't going to survive famine. We weren't going to survive coming to another country. And we can't forgive them or love them because they don't know better. They don't know better. I don't know better. I'll be 42. I don't know what the hell I'm doing half the time. But I'm an expert on Forbes. I have a Rolls Royce. I have nice things. But I don't know what I'm doing. And that's what we have to be honest with ourselves. And then we have to, if we want that forgiveness from our significant other and from our kids and our parents, why aren't we giving that to them? Right? That's real compassion and love. And so from that, that's how I developed it. And it's still a struggle, man. I learned every single day. I had to check myself every single day. But man, it's worth it. And I encourage you all to do that.
How has that mindset change impacted your day to day as a business person and the way you approach just being a human being?
We don't succeed because we want more. We self-sabotage. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Right now, all of us, if we were graduating high school, or your guys' case, college, which I wish I could fill one day, I will, hopefully. When we did that, that was the highest achievement success. When we got that nice car, it was the highest achievement success. And we were able to buy our parents that dinner or take them on that trip, or even buy our home. It was the highest achievement success. But like most people, we confuse success and greed. We put ourselves in positions where we can live very comfortably, but because John has the new S class, I have to go work and get the new Maybach. We enslave ourselves. And the hours and the time that we put enslaving on ourselves to do that, we're hiding from reality. We're choosing, and I don't care what anyone tells you, this 100%, you're choosing to hide underneath success so you don't have to deal with your parents, your family, and the things that you're struggling internally. And for me, it was enough. I didn't need 10 cars. I didn't need the new Lamborghini I bought. I didn't need any of this stuff because it didn't matter, because I was losing my family and I was losing myself. And that's where it was. We're sabotaging ourselves because it's never enough. Look, There's a reason that billionaires blow their brains out. There's a reason that actors blow their brains out. And I'm not talking about mental health, which is a completely different thing. We as Asian Americans, we don't take care of our mental health.
Right.
We pray to our ancestors. We do every holiday, right? We don't take care of ourselves mentally. And why? Because, and I've done this in business. You're doing great. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, if we expand here, we're gonna make that 30, 40% more. What you don't factor in is how much time it's gonna take and I'm happy it's gonna make you. So now my decisions are, if I'm gonna do this, whether I make money or lose money, that's irrelative. Not because I don't need money, but because I don't need the additional things that are enslaving me to have to achieve that 15, 30, 70,000 a month goal. And I'm not happy. So as soon as I got rid of a lot of the stuff, I had my weekends to myself. I had my nights to myself. I had holidays to myself. I grew up in the restaurant business. I spent 20, 30 years and New Year's Eves at the restaurant, and Mother's Days and Valentine's Days and Christmases because we were the only restaurant open during the holiday. And I missed out on a whole length of life. I don't want that for my kids. But making the extra $300, it's not worth not seeing the smile on my kids' faces, or hanging, or making the extra $2,000 not worth not spending time with my parents. It's not worth it. You have to have a sense of value. And anytime I do anything now is it worth my time? And if it's not, I'm just not going to do it because I'm happy.
A lot of people will hear what you're saying and will bark back at you. And they'll say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, says the guy with the money, and says the guy who's XYZ. I want to share with everybody, too, who's listening. It's backwards. You are where you are because of the mindset.
That's
Happiness
right.
leads to success, not success leading to happiness. And
Right.
Part of the reason I wanted to do this podcast with just storytelling is I don't want my kids and your kids to have this same discussion with each other in 30 years.
That's
And
right.
and if we don't intervene, it's going to happen
That's
because
right.
we are trained at an early age. Um, why do you think we grew up liking or equating material goods of certain brands as monumental, significant markers of life movements? When you get married, you're supposed to gift something. When you graduate, you're supposed to get something, and so we've been conditioned to equate those things. And you're right. Whether you're broke or have a closet full of them, either way, at the extremes, you're like, none of this stuff matters. But somewhere in between, we pursue these things. Um, I don't know the exact quote, but I remember hearing something that if your goals are quantifiable, you will expand them so much that you'll never actually achieve them. So if it's money, there's never a point there is enough. If it's a value on your stock portfolio or your house, there's no, you build the world's tallest building and you're like, cool. And then some asshole comes and builds a bigger tower. Oh shit. What are you going to do? Build It's never ending, right? So you have to have your goal be something that is actually intangible, unquantifiable. Things like happiness. And
Right.
that's it. Like happiness and just calm and health and all these things that I think, particularly given what we're going through now, that people are hopefully starting to realize that none of this stuff really matters. So what I find fascinating about your recent story, David, is you are invested and take an active participation in esports, which is good because it is timely, but it is also an arena, literally and figuratively, that is in the space of younger people
Right.
about half your age. Um, you go far beyond the investment. You go far beyond business acumen. I fundamentally believe part of it is your way of giving back to share these lessons and to be the responsible human business leader, older brother, uncle type of figure that, and I hate to say we wish we had because that's offensive to the people that raised us, but um, to give them a different perspective on maybe some things that they never had growing up from their Asian parents or their, I mean, can you imagine if you were 17, if you and I were 17 and you're like, I'm going to go play video games for a living and screw college? Like that was a non-starter. Um, to tell us about your decision to go into that space and some of the things that you have learned since then that you didn't anticipate learning when you invested initially.
The one thing I always talk about is be kind. You know, you always hear that story about you treat the CEO the same as the janitor. And for a lot of us Asians, hopefully it is what it is. 10 years ago, there was a he's a Grammy Award winning nominated producer. He's on E Entertainment. He did Lady Gaga's album, Clinton Sparks. Good friend of mine, his book's expert back there. He was a DJ at one of my nightclubs, and at the end of it, I had asked him the next day to have breakfast and talk. And he said, "Yo, in all my years of DJing, you didn't ask me to do rails and hang out with hookers. You asked me to talk." And it was weird for him. And we just had a conversation, like me and you're having, just a very honest one. I'm very honest. I'm very transparent. Like when we talk about, when people say, "Oh, it's really easy for you." Look, I'm trying to figure out how to pay half my bills at this point, like everyone else. And I'll keep, yeah, worth X amount on my Forbes, but I'll keep it real. I don't need to lie about things like that. That's not who I am, because we're all doing it. And I remember him telling me this, and we just stayed friends for 10 years on social media. And I don't want anything. I just chime in, chit chat, text. And he goes, "Yo, I joined this company called FaZeClan. It's an eSports, so the largest blah, blah. They have 10 billion views and 330 million subscribers in 2018. They're looking to raise around." And I said, "Okay." And he's like, "Do you want to get into it?" I said, "It's a sports team." I go, "It's the largest in the world." He goes, "Yeah." I go, "How much?" Tells me the number. I put it in. I'm in. It was really that simple. And it was pretty much my whole savings. I'll shoot that straight at that point. But it was the opportunity to invest in something that I truly believed in, because I played video games my whole entire life. And when mom and dad were sleeping, I was playing video games. I didn't care what mom and dad were thinking. I remember the story like, "Oh, you play video game, your head's gonna be this big, your thumbs are gonna be this big, but you're gonna die. Oh, you're so fat because you just sit at home and play video game." Just whatever the Asian parents say that we know it's really loving, right? And then I just enjoyed it, and I knew the power of media, right? What you and I are doing, what guys like Ty are doing. My cousin, Yuling, who was the first state assemblywoman of Chinese in New York, are doing, is we're doing what we didn't do. We're really navigating the waters, and we are kind of so worried about it. We talk about this. We don't get all the recognition, not from the other communities, from our own communities. That's the haterade. That's the haterism that we've been taught against each other, and that's why we're failing as a society of Asians. We don't support each other. And I remember the story. There was a lady who was doing a movie, and it's called Shanghai Tang. And I met the actress, and she said, "The reason my movie, it was a great movie, so the reason I didn't get hit is because most movies don't make it like they do in the African American community, because they support each other." Think about Crazy Rich Asians. You hear the statistics. Asians didn't watch it until 4 weeks into it. It was all the minorities, and then it was, "Oh, okay, well, I guess it's kind of cool now to go over there and watch this movie." I was guilty of it. I was like, you know what I mean? Like what is this? And then I realized that was the power of esports. And the first deal I did together was actually the Super Bowl commercial, Planters Peanuts, last year. And let this be known to everyone. A dropout from El Paso who came from Taiwan, who's a fob, put together a Super Bowl commercial, worked together with A-Rod, Charlie Sheen, FaZeClan, Gary V, Planters Peanuts. And I used my relationships and my real friendships. And the thing that Asians lack is, we have a lot of friends and a lot of family, but we don't have meaningful relationships. Meaningful, right? Ty, I'll use Ty's example. We have, as honest as me and you have been on our conversations, Jerry, I'm like that with Ty. And for Ty to shoot me a photo of his son, I don't really know. I've never met Ty physically. I knew that we have a meaningful relationship. It's really just caring about you and not wanting anything else back, atypical of what we've been taught as Asians. And so when I did the eSport thing, it was because I knew that 67% of the eSports community are Asian Americans, and Asians have the highest rate of suicide and teen suicide. In America, we have the highest rate of suicide, and nobody is talking about it because we're all ashamed and we're all upset and we're all taught not to share our problems, and we're all miserable. And so for me, it was a way to really be part of that. And then I started North American Collegiate League, which is a nonprofit league. And we're in 220 universities, and we've done 15 different titles. And I have a bunch of NBA players who are my partners. And I did it because I wanted not just to build esports and let people know it's okay. And I speak at universities all the time. But I also wanted to let the Asians know it was okay. I wanted them knew who's with me. I met this kid a year ago speaking at U of H. The kid moved, and he lives with me now. He left school, left his girl and his family. He was doing terrible in school. He was so lost. And there's so many of those stories. And he says he found his sense of worth with us. And there's so many of us out there. And that's why I did esports, because every single person to its core in our culture, that is part of our culture. And it meant so much to me. And it was a way to get to the masses single handedly, very, very quickly, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, and spread the message, not just that esports are okay. And an ex managing part of Deloitte is part of it, which helps a lot.
Right.
Or he's on Forbes yesterday, which helps a lot. And then they look at him, like, dude, you dropped out of college. Or you went through this, or you went through that, and you went through this, and you're Asian. And it gives them a sense of hope. And that's all I'm trying to do is give a sense of hope. Like, someone asked me the other day, what's going to make you happy? What do you want to do the rest of your life? And I said, if I could just do this the rest of my life and just help, I've succeeded. And to me, that's what esports is. And that's how I kind of got involved in it. And we got lucky. I mean, the valuation last year when I came in was at 120, and then Forbes put us at $250 million this year. And I showed it to my parents, and they were like, oh. And the first thing they said, oh, did you get paid dividends already? And I'm like, Asian parents, there we go again. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're on Forbes. And I think the first thing was, what is Forbes? And the second thing was, did you get paid dividends? But the point that I'm trying to make across is it's always one of those things that you have to grow. And for me, it mattered because we have a very young community that's very, very lost right now, even more so than ever with this COVID-19 thing, who are being made fun of, who don't know how to defend themselves, who don't know what to say, who are shocked when I see something that a friend puts up and I have to explain to them why the word China virus is bad, not because it didn't come from China or whatever the heck it was, but because we have 7-year-old Amas getting their butts kicked in San Francisco and 70-year-old men in New York getting beaten up and thrown acid on. I had to explain that to them. And they didn't know that. And so for me, it's a giant mass platform, cross-culturally, globally, instantaneously. May 2nd, we have a tournament with Malaysia, Burma, Thailand, South America, Canada, US, Fortnite on a global level. Where else can you do that? You can't do that in sports. You play basketball, you have to rest a couple weeks, you got to fly the team over. But we get the message out. And when people hit me up, I really spend my time trying to tweet everyone back, DM everyone back, going back, because it matters to me. I don't care what race you are, but I want you to feel good. And if we can inspire a couple people and help them, then we've done our jobs.
I think it's awesome. We often talk about representation from a visual perspective, right? It's nice to see somebody that looks like you. I can see myself in, whether it is the partnership at the Deloitte level or at the board level, as you are with FaZeClan and the many other things that you do. What most people don't talk about is far more important than that is context. There are many, many people that look like me and you that have even more influential places of platforms and don't do anything or don't do as much. Maybe it's a fear of what their white or other friends might think. Maybe it's to protect their assets, or it's for whatever reason. And there's no judgment, right? You live your life however you want. But when we meet people like you who not only have achieved so much traditionally, where you get the parents be like, oh, okay, we'll listen to him, right? Because he checks the boxes, his resume checks out, as they say. But then you are now at this part of your life, at a very early part of your life, relatively speaking, to now point that entire canon of attention and influence onto the legacy portion. And most people don't think about legacy until it's too late. But I believe you have to start with the legacy and work backwards into it. Share with us a little bit more about the work that you're doing right now with your podcast, with Pandanomics, and some of the more active engagements, virtual stages, let's say. Stages we'll see when they come back. But you have shared with me that you spend a lot of time, and this is all from the heart. Obviously, you're not going to get rich speaking at colleges or doing these podcast interviews, but share with me a little bit more about your idea behind Pandanomics and why it is so important to you that you continue to share your story.
Pandanomics is interesting, and I think you'll like the name. Everyone that finds me it's David Chen Panda on Twitter, Instagram. I hated the word panda. I assimilated panda with fat, lazy, soft, weak. And when people would racially say the word panda to me, and for most people I know, I'm 6'4", 6'5", 280. I'm a big guy from Taiwan. I'm tall, big guy, right? It irked me because my anger and my manhood was to prove at a young age that I could fight and I could hold my own. And I was an athlete. It wasn't because I had quote unquote sunny eyes, but if I was African American or white, I'd be a first Division 1 prospect because of just my size alone and my speed. And I believe that I wasn't because of my background, or because of lack of encouragement from my parents to pursue those avenues and all that stuff. And so for Pandanomics, to name it Pandanomics, it was accepting and embracing the brand that pandas are what they are, but it was a really brand technique because now everyone thinks the word panda at a PF, at Panda Express, they'll message me randomly, or they're at Walmart, they'll see panda heads and they'll shoot me photos. Like, oh, panda, cool. Global branding at its best. That's great. I accepted what people could assimilate without being offensive, right? I didn't fall into the stereotype of either which way. Pandanomics itself was built, to be very honest, in our first series of events, I talk about my childhood in most honest details I can. My second one's the power of positivity because we're not taught to be positive. We're taught to be realistic or even somewhat negative, right? We're not. It's all 90. Oh, good job. Where's the other 10 points? The third one was about ego. Why our egos are such a big deal, right? Those things matter to me because that's essentially been the core of our Eastern culture, but we've lost it coming into the Western culture in the modern age. This is not something that we don't know in our core as Easterners and the way we've been taught and raised. We just lost it, or we forgot about it, or we didn't assimilate it. And that's what Pandanomics is about. And season 2 has been talking to industry leaders. A Steve Babcock who is Gary's ex CCO, and Jennifer Hahn, who is Korean American, who is the IFB women's boxing champion, to Clinton Sparks I mentioned, and these are all my friends who are really, really close to me, and they all have the same core, and I want to share this with everyone. First off, everyone's kind. Nobody's a jerk. So out of the 10, 12 people I've dealt with, Grammy nominated, Emmy nominated, the head of Microsoft, to everyone else I've talked to in between, everyone's kind. Number 2, everyone is hardworking. They don't quit. There is no, I can't make this happen. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to figure it out. And 3, they're all happy with themselves. They found happiness. And without that, nothing else mattered. And that's what Pandanomics is about. It's as raw and as real as me and you right now, where you saw some tears coming out. That wasn't fake. That's really emotionally how I felt. And I can see it building up in you too. It's just as honest as I can, and the struggles. And I have no shame in saying what my struggles are. Because if you're not struggling, you're full of shit. I'll call you out on it. I will. But I want to be honest. There's this whole world of all these big mentors out there. I could do it. I could post all the nice things and boost my promo online and go look up. And then the one thing I have is I have Deloitte, and you get 2 million followers tomorrow, and go buy whatever for $99, and only 5% of it works. Come on, man. That's not the way. If anything, that's shaming our people even more. It's about being honest and talking and helping and growing. And you're going to realize very, very quickly that all of us have similar stories. All of us have ego problems. All of us have positivity problems. Not foo-foo positive, but like right now, oh, I don't have a job, and I don't know what to do with my businesses. I'm like, well, at least I saw my home, and at least I saw my family. I'll build my businesses back up. It's okay. The world's not going to end. I'm smart enough to do it. I'll figure it out. And that's what it is. And I hyperventilate like everyone else. Like yesterday, I was having a panic attack. I was like, dude, how are we going to pay our bills? Here comes May again. What do we do? How are we going to get this done? And when it's all said and done, you're still here. You still have to deal with it. And so for me, that's what Pandanomics Podcast is. It's just a very honest look into being a corporatepreneur, corporate guy, while following your entrepreneurial dreams and living, a good and healthy and happy life where we're full of self-love, self-improvement, and self-value.
David, I want to thank you. For the listeners' context, Ty, who's been on the show from Asians Never Die, after we recorded the show, he said, "Hey, I have some people I want you to meet." And he talked about you before he sent the email. And I think he, either reached out to you or just wanted to give it some thought. But when that email came out, you responded immediately. You gave me time to talk before this interview, because you wanted to get it right and you wanted to get to know me and to understand why I wanted to do this. And looking at your resume and knowing what you do day to day, that's incredible. That speaks to your character, and it just means a lot because you could be doing a lot of different things right now. You could be, sure, we all joke right now, right? Like everybody's home, everybody's got all the time. But you have businesses, you have employees, you have fellow board members, you have, 9-figure brands that you are responsible for. But yet you take the time to speak with me and through the show to the countless people that will listen to this show eventually. And hopefully with the goal of helping one little David, little Jerry somewhere out there in the universe to choose happiness and to understand that you can infinitely love and appreciate your parents for everything that they've done for you, but still chart your own path and take them along for the journey. We want to thank you for coming on the show. And we end the show in the same way that we do every show. And it is to go back to the name of the show. And Dear Asian Americans is the embodiment of a love letter to us and from us, yet ultimately for us. As you mentioned, we didn't really have a lot of types of conversation like this, not even amongst ourselves, but just to hear. So, an opportunity to share anything you want to share with the greater Asian American population, or perhaps somebody who you would have liked to have heard from at their age. So I will start the letter. And if you could help us finish out the show by completing the letter, Dear Asian Americans.
Dear Asian Americans, you're worthy, you're worth it, you have value, you're significant. We have survived 100% of our worst days. Every heartbreak, every failure, every loss, every time we didn't think we could go on, we're still here. Us as a race, we're one of the longest living races in the world, civilizations in the world. We're here. And I want everyone to remember that. You survived 100% of your worst days. And so you can survive anything. And you have to break the cycle. Break the cycle with the way you act, with what you buy, with your family, with your kids. You have the ability to, the whole world's human knowledge is in the palm of your hands, and you can do anything you want. You just have to believe in yourself and stop hating on our own races. Start supporting. We're going to be okay. And I always end it with Panda loves you. And that's that.
I love the fact that you've leaned into an identity and a nickname that likely caused pain at different parts
Yeah.
of your life.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of these things where it's like, oh, why isn't it? You're Chinese. Pandas, or, I don't know, they're not Chinese bears, but they have a correlation, an association. So, but I think it's very telling and reflective of the journey that you've gone on yourself. Um, as you embark on, the next chapter of your life through your engagement and eventually, hopefully, having a family of your own. I am so excited for what's to come. Uh, you mentioned earlier that you're turning 40 very soon. Um, you're not even at halftime yet, man,
Yeah, I
and
know.
that's
Totally.
exciting.
It is.
That's really, really exciting. So, thank you for investing the time with me and to us and to sharing your story. Um, may all this crazy times pass, and let's go celebrate in person at some point, man.
Absolutely. And thank you for your time as well and having such a great platform, Jerry. People like you and Ty that inspire people like me to keep doing what we're doing as well. So thank you. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. See you soon.